This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, where researchers come to learn, innovate, and connect.
All our data goes through multiple layers of validation and verification. And you're right, the first step is to quick look through and pull out the data you need. For a quick look, the data is there. And then when you need to go back, you should be able to get that data back and point out to where we got it and go into even bigger, deeper research, because those filings are big and those filings have a lot of data all over the place.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm your host, Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Raul Peralta, co-founder and CEO of Kaleidoscope, a financial filings research and analytics platform. Hello, Raul. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Thanks, Jen. Glad to be here. Excited to be here.
So before we dive into Kaleidoscope and financial filings, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share a little bit about how your career got started and then how that led you to founding Kaleidoscope.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to share that little history. It started early on. After college, I joined a small startup here in Dallas, actually, called 10K Wizard. When I finished college, it was barely started, and I was employee number 3. I did that for 8 something years. Learned way too much about SEC filings. We built a searching engine. We did some alerting. We did a lot of that, and it was great. And then, we sold it after Morningstar, and that was awesome. Did some work there. But then at some point, I decided I wanted to do more things with big data, which was the big term back then. So I did that for a little while. And then at some point, I decided that we wanted to get back into SEC filings. We saw a need. We saw that the companies that we were competing back then, they were kind of gone. And so we thought, well, let's give it another run. But this time kind of combine more analytics and more extraction and AI now than before. So that's a quick little run through of how I got into Kaleidoscope.
How cool. You were employee number 3.
I was. For someone that just right out of college, that was pretty cool. And to be honest, I didn't expect to go into a small company. I always wanted to go into one of the big ones, as everyone does, I guess. But, they gave me the opportunity and I learned so much. So I'm a big proponent of small companies. We had so many hats. And so I learned the business side. I also learned the programming side. I also learned the hardware side, which, God, that was horrible. You learn all those things and you're able to get more knowledge that way. So it was a great experience.
And considering that at that time, when you got out of college and joined 10K Wizard, the whole big Y2K fiasco had just happened.
Oh my God. Yes, it was awful. Yeah, it just happened. So luckily I didn't have to go through the nightmares of making sure that everything was still going to be working. So I joined like March of 2000, but there were still some things that, funny enough, we didn't know that were broken until April, May, that the dates were wrong and we had to scramble and try to fix that really quickly. It was an interesting time to join for sure.
Yeah, I think there's people who don't even know, who are, in business now that don't even know that when we changed from 1999 to 2000, it was a big deal for computers.
Oh my God. It was, and everyone was freaking out about it, that there were so many issues that were going to happen. There were some, but luckily I think we all kind of saw it coming maybe 5 years beforehand and everyone was working on it. So yeah, but that was a strange world. Coincidentally, I think for us, the challenging part on that time was actually 9/11. When 10K Wizard started, it was all free. And so it was all ad driven. But we realized that at some point that was drying out because the bubble was kind of bursting. And so we said, hey, let's go into a paid model. And we're going to go on it September 1st of 2001.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And so, for the first 10 days, it was all great and things were going smoothly. Well, I mean, people were complaining about it because we went from free to pay. But yeah, and then 9/11 happened and then everything just kind of shut down. And so it's kind of challenging for the next couple of weeks as we went through that process. So that to us was the big challenging event on 10K Wizard.
Well, speaking of events, so since that time, what's like the most exciting change you've seen relative to data in the intervening years?
We always got requests for extracting data and it was just impossible. It was just really, really hard, right? The data was big. We didn't have the computing power wasn't there. But now just the amount of computing power available is it's unbelievable. We use a lot of it for extraction on our side and gathering signals, but we do things now that back then we would just laugh at when people were asking us. It's like, can you extract this and then categorize it and summarize it and all this stuff? And we're just going like, look, that's not possible. No one can ever do that. And now it's like, oh, well, that's just a Monday. But yeah, that the computing power in my mind is just unbelievable than what we have right now than what we had back then.
That's cool. That's not what I thought you would answer. I wasn't sure, but I hadn't thought about computing power as being a significant change.
My mind always goes into my developer side. On the business side, I think it's different. Back then, one of the things that we liked about our company was it was all research. And we would just provide your searching capabilities and that was good enough. And nowadays, I think it's different. People expect for you to unearth more and more data or more and more attributes from the data before they even get into the researching part. And to me, that's been kind of the most challenging part, just because it took me a little while just to kind of get used to the mentality of the consumer that it is now. They want more things up front. They want to see them before diving in. They want to compile all this data for them before they even go into the full research.
And it comes right out of the computing power,
Exactly.
the expectation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's more expectations now just because we keep pushing the boundaries. And so at some point that becomes a norm. And so the more and more the computers can do for you, then that's just what's expected from you. So we couldn't bring the same technology that we had back in 10K Wizard nowadays because people would just laugh at it. It's not anywhere near what the consumer wants now.
That's wild. And speaking of now and Kaleidoscope, I've been fortunate enough to be able to use your tool, and it makes it so simple, really simple to find exactly what we need. And when we're doing like the short research, we don't want to have to dig deep into financial filings. We can get some really good data fast. But we all know that financial filings are really intense. They're complicated. It's hard for an average person to be reading them. And we also know that although expectations are high, the machine can only do so much. So my question for you is, how much should we be double checking the original filings? Like there's a lot of complexity in the financial filings. What's your reassurance that Kaleidoscope is doing the job?
I think you should always be double checking. Not to say that we're not extracting the data correctly or we're not presenting it correctly. I think that was one of the founding things on Kaleidoscope. We wanted to be able to show you all these statistics, all these data gathered, extracted, and put into one place. But I think our main goal was, here's the data, here's the numbers, here's how they all apply. But we're going to show you where we got this data from and how to get that data back so you can double check and verify. I think it's great that you get it presented, and trust me, you should trust us, but at the same time, you should always double check. We want to present you the option to double check if you need to, because you're right, the filings are complex. And so the data is all over the place sometimes. We do our best to bring it all into one place to extract all this data, but our job is to give you also the tools that if you want to, you can verify. Because I think that's important. You should always have the option to be able to validate every single data point that you have in front of you.
Well, that I guess represents some kind of level of research, right? So when we do our quick research, we just need to qualify that they actually have wealth and kind of what bucket that fits in. Whereas if we're getting closer to asking for a gift, we need to dig a lot deeper and we need to start looking at some of those stock options or derivatives that they have. Or if we know there's an event like retirement coming up, we want to know, what does that mean for the prospect's wealth? And that way we can click right there and go into the filing, which is nice.
For a quick look, the data is there. All our data goes through multiple layers of validation and verification. But at the same time, to me as a researcher, I always like to be able to jump back into it. And you're right, the first step is to quick look through and pull out the data you need. And then when you need to go back, you should be able to get that data back and point out to where we got it and go into even bigger, deeper research, because those filings are big and those filings have a lot of data all over the place.
Not only that, but they're written by lawyers, and lawyers don't always speak great language.
We always joke around that filings can be almost the same year after year. Like if you take the annual filings, Except if you find that there's like 3 or 4 sections where they're brutally honest, if you want to say it that way. And that's where the good stuff of the companies in there. And so if you want to do a best research, you just find those sections and you go through them.
Another thing I'm excited about you tackling are the ADV filings. So that's the investment advisor filings. And that's really a whole can of worms because there's so much variation there. But even knowing that some of those key pieces of information about percentage ownership of the firm, for example, or indirect ownership would be super helpful at a glance.
To be quite honest, I didn't know a ton about ADV filings maybe 2 years ago. I knew they existed. I knew where they were. I just didn't really go into them. There's some pretty good stuff in there. It just helps the researcher. One of the challenges on that, it's kind of like filings. They put a lot of the things on their brochures. They are tricky. Having the ADV data is proven to be one of those good things to help a researcher.
It is because those tedious numbers, like for the pooled investment funds, that's great for machines. They can go ahead and add up those numbers for us, and then we can read the brochure if we need to. I'm happy with that as a compromise.
Are you sure? You got to tell everyone that because I keep getting requests about doing so much more on brochures, and we are, but yeah, the brochures are messy, but there's some good stuff that we can extract from those. Again, back to the whole computing power, we just send those into the AI and then we're able to get some good stuff out of it.
Oh, there's the magic word, artificial intelligence. So, how intelligent is it when it comes to reading brochures? Can it get more intelligent?
I wish we could send an entire brochure and say, give us this, but because it can't, you can only certain number of tokens, as if you will. And so it's too much. You got to like do a pre-processing and identify the paragraphs that you want. And then you send them to the AI. And the AI does a pretty good job. I mean, it's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job in extracting and summarizing some of the stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, once we get past our initial development, I think it'd be something really cool for people to see.
Ah, there's hope. I love it.
There's always hope, yes.
So now that you've been working in the nonprofit sector, I'm curious, what kinds of surprises have you come across?
So many. The ADV stuff, it's pretty interesting. I didn't understand, I guess, how much they're used or the need to them. So when someone brought them up again, like about a year or so ago, I just didn't understand it. So there's that. I didn't understand the like 990 data too, which we've talked about. We haven't talked about now, but we may later. But there's all that. There were a couple of things that caught me off guard. I always wanted to do some type of CRM integration, but the way that different nonprofits use the CRMs are interesting and not the way that I originally envisioned. So there's been some surprises on the development side of things that I wasn't planning for. But on the actual platform side, the amount of calculations done, I knew about it. I'd known some of the calculations that you would do, but some of the things that we gotten requests for, it would have never crossed my mind to have gone and done those couple calculations. So that was a little bit surprising, the level and the number of different points used on those calculations. So those are just a few. Yeah, I've been surprised. Every month, I'm surprised for a couple of things being requested or being asked of us.
Well, good. I'm glad we're keeping you on your toes.
On our team, and especially in the development team, we like challenges, and every time that someone brings us a challenge, we enjoy it, and we got to figure out a way to tackle it. So yeah, so I like those kind of challenges.
Is there anything about Kaleidoscope that you feel is a really powerful opportunity, but it gets overlooked by nonprofit researchers?
There's a few things, when you look at Kaleidoscope initially, you think it's just SEC research platform. You just want to be able to look at those filings and research them. And that's as far as we go. But we're trying to get more and more into the prospecting kind of world, kind of help a little bit with some of the management of that too. So that kind of gets a little bit overlooked. Some of the capabilities that we have there, aside from just looking at actual filings and being able to view filings. Some of our alerting capabilities sometimes get overlooked a little bit. We put a lot of effort to make sure that we alert on company events, on company filings, or list changes. Some of those things, they get overlooked a little bit. We kind of have to go through a couple of iterations on demos and trials just to make sure that they're fully aware of all our capabilities, and especially those.
So before I let you go, I'm wondering if you have a favorite resource you can recommend. And it can be anything related to Kaleidoscope and SEC filings or something else.
It's a good question there, Jen. I like to see the feedback of people. So I usually follow Prospectel. I like to see those bulletin boards and just to see what's out there and what people are talking about, just to see where maybe the industry is going or things that are not being maybe done or, what other kind of things we should do. And obviously I follow a lot of things on AI world just because it's pretty exciting. Keeps me thinking of things that we could do on our side. There's a couple of blogs that I follow there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing.
Thanks for having me.
That was Raul Peralta, co-founder and CEO of Kaleidoscope, a financial filings research and analytics platform. Are you intrigued about the possibilities with Kaleidoscope? I can tell you firsthand that at Aspire we now zip through qualification research and are immediately clued in to hot highlights like gifting stock before we even open up and read a single filing. And the idea that Kaleidoscope might tackle the Form ADV for registered investment advisors? Candy to a baby, that's what this is. So of course, Aspire, through the Prospect Research Institute, has partnered with Kaleidoscope on a 3-part workshop series in 2025. You'll still learn how to find and read SEC filings from the government's Edgar database, but we're also going to highlight how Kaleidoscope could dramatically change your work process for the better. Visit www.prospectresearchinstitute.org and check out the 2025 workshops. You won't be disappointed.